I was 5 minutes early to my parents' anniversary dinner, still hoping foolishly that this time would be different. The private room glowed under golden light, and my son, Noah, clutched my hand like he always did when he felt small in big places. "Can I get dessert?" he whispered. "Anything you want," I promised. Then I saw them, my sister Amber, her husband, their kids devouring $100 steaks. She didn't stand, didn't smile. Just slid the breadbasket toward Noah and said, almost amused, "We didn't order for your son." My dad added, "You should have packed him something." My mom didn't even look up from her glass of water. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then something inside me, years of swallowing my pride and paying everyone else's bills, finally cracked. So when the waiter returned, I stood up, looked straight at my family and said, "Cancel their orders. My son will eat tonight." I had spent weeks planning that dinner. 40 years of marriage deserved something beautiful, something peaceful. I booked the best steakhouse in town, reserved a private room, and even brought a restored photo from my parents' wedding framed in silver, wrapped in gold paper. I thought for once, maybe we could all sit down and act like a family. But the moment Amber opened her mouth, I knew I'd been naive. She didn't even look up when Noah and I walked in. "Oh, hey," she said, as if we'd just interrupted her manicure. Caleb, her husband, already had a drink in hand. Their two boys were shouting over a video game, headphones around their necks, plates of steak half-eaten in front of them. No one stood. No one asked how we'd been. I helped Noah unfold his napkin, whispering, "You can order whatever you want, honey." He smiled shyly, pointing at the chicken tenders on the menu, cheaper than anything on the table, but his favorite. I was about to wave for the waiter when Amber leaned across the table, pulling the breadbasket toward Noah. "We didn't order for your son," she said, like it was a completely normal thing to say. I blinked, waiting for anyone to correct her, but my father just sighed. "You should have packed him something," he muttered. The words hit like a slap. My mom didn't even look up from her water glass. The air in the room thickened, hot and humiliating. Noah's smile faded. He stared down at his napkin, twisting it between his fingers. Something inside me hardened. I wasn't just embarrassed, I was done. Done being the dependable one. Done paying Amber's bills, babysitting her kids, fixing her messes while everyone excused her chaos. I took a slow breath and looked at the waiter who had just returned, pad in hand. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "Please cancel any orders that haven't been sent to the kitchen." Amber's head snapped up. "What?" I smiled, steady and cold. "And please move everything already ordered to my father's bill. It's his anniversary, after all." A hush fell over the table. My dad froze mid-bite. Amber's mouth opened, then closed again. "And my son," I added, "will have the ribeye medium rare with truffle mac and cheese. Make it quick." Noah's eyes widened. Then, slowly, he smiled. For the first time that night, he wasn't ashamed. And for the first time in years, neither was I. No one spoke for a full 30 seconds after I ordered. You could hear the clink of ice in Amber's glass, the muted laughter from another table, the quiet hum of the air conditioning. My dad just stared at me, jaw tight, like I'd committed a crime against the family name. Amber leaned back in her chair, a sharp little laugh escaping her throat. "Wow, Lauren. Overreact much?" she said. "It was just dinner." "Exactly," I replied. "Dinner. Which apparently requires humiliating my child first." Caleb cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Come on, let's not make a scene." I cut him off. "Oh, a scene? Because that's your family's favorite word for consequences." He looked down at his drink. My mom shifted in her seat but said nothing. Silence became their weapon, as always. I'd seen this act too many times. Amber the victim, my parents the peacemakers, and me, the unreasonable one. When the waiter returned with Noah's ribeye, he placed it gently in front of him, then glanced at me with a faint, knowing nod. I returned it with a quiet "thank you," Noah whispered. "It's okay, Mom." "No," I said softly, cutting his steak for him. "It's not, but it will be." Amber's kids were now whining because their fries had gone cold. My mom started fussing over them immediately, like it was a national emergency. Noah just ate quietly, every bite deliberate, like he understood this meal wasn't just food, it was a statement. When the check finally came, the waiter handed it to my dad. I watched the color rise in his face as he saw the total. He looked at me as if I'd betrayed him. "You really think this was necessary?" he asked through clenched teeth. I met his stare. Completely. He pushed his chair back. "You've embarrassed us." "Funny," I said, standing up. "That's exactly what you said when I graduated with honors instead of getting engaged like Amber." His lips tightened, but I didn't wait for another word. I placed the gold-wrapped photo on the table. "For the anniversary," I said. "You can open it when we're gone." I took Noah's hand, and we started toward the door. As we passed the dessert cart, my elbow brushed a tray just enough to send one delicate plate crashing to the floor. The entire room turned to look. I didn't apologize. Outside, the night air felt cool, sharp, clean. Noah squeezed my hand again. "Mom?" he said softly. "Are we in trouble?" I knelt so we were eye to eye. "No, sweetheart," I said. "We're free." Behind us, through the window, I saw my father glaring, Amber whispering, my mother pretending not to notice the broken dessert plate on the floor. Let them eat in silence. I'd had enough of swallowing mine. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing texts, calls, voicemails. "Amber. What the hell is wrong with you, Dad? You'll pay for that dinner, Lauren. You humiliated us. Mom. You embarrassed your father on his anniversary." I didn't answer a single one. I poured myself coffee, helped Noah get ready for school, and let the storm scream into the void. By evening, I thought it had passed. I was wrong. At exactly 6:42 p.m., a car door slammed in my driveway, then another. Through the window, I saw them, my parents, Amber, and that envelope in my father's hand. He was gripping it like it was evidence for a trial. Noah peeked from behind the curtain. "They're here," he whispered. "I know," I said quietly, setting my mug down. "Go to your room, sweetheart." The doorbell didn't ring, they just walked in, as if my house still belonged to them. "Lauren," my mother began, her voice dripping with performative calm. "We need to talk." Amber crossed her arms. "You embarrassed the whole family last night. You turned a simple dinner into a circus." I leaned against the counter, arms folded. "You mean the dinner where you refused to feed my son?" Dad dropped the manila envelope on the island with a sharp thud. "That's the invoice for the private room. $1,000. Since you decided to cancel things, you'll pay your share." I looked at the envelope, then back at him. "You came here for $1,000? Amber scoffed. "You're unbelievable." That's when I picked up my phone and called Uncle Mark. "They're here," I said simply. "We'll be there in 10, he replied. The room went still. Amber frowned. "You called reinforcements? God, you always need an audience." "I just like witnesses," I said. 9 minutes later, Mark and Aunt Diane walked in without knocking. My mother's fake smile faltered. My dad's color drained. Mark stood beside me, quiet but solid. Diane's eyes swept the room like she was collecting data. "Let's make this quick," I said. "I'm done supporting Amber. The rent I've been covering for the past year done. The babysitting done. The excuses done." Amber's voice shot up. "Excuse me? You offered? You wanted to help." Diane's tone cut through her like a blade. "You wanted help, Amber. And Lauren gave it. Every time you called crying about bills or Doug or life being unfair, when's the last time you helped her?" Amber's jaw clenched. No answer. Dad slammed a palm on the counter. "Enough. This is between sisters." Diane didn't flinch. "Then maybe start acting like one." Silence. I opened the envelope, pulled out the invoice, and looked at the number. 1,000 even. I reached into my purse, pulled out my wallet, and laid 5 crisp hundreds on the counter. "Here," I said. "Not out of obligation, out of pure pettiness. So you don't get the satisfaction of the full amount." Amber gasped. "You're pathetic." "No," I said softly. "I'm free." My father's face twisted red. "We raised you better than this." I walked to the door and opened it wide. "No," I said, voice calm, steady. "You raised me to serve, to stay quiet, to make peace at my own expense. I'm unlearning that now." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Mark stood beside me. That was enough. They filed out angry, muttering, slamming the door behind them. I locked it. Then I just stood there, staring at the empty space where the envelope had been. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. It was silence, clean, sharp, and final. The quiet after that confrontation lasted barely 3 days. Then came the digital war. It started with a Facebook post. Amber uploaded a smiling photo of her and my parents, captioned, "Family is everything, even when some people forget what that means." The comments section filled fast. Hearts, prayers, cousins chiming in with, "So true," and "You deserve peace, girl." No names, of course, but everyone knew who "some people" meant. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I just scrolled, screenshot, and closed the app. Silence had worked better than any argument that night. At dinner it would work again. Or so I thought. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was making pancakes for Noah. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. "Mrs. Hayes?" a woman's voice asked. "This is from Willow Creek Elementary." My stomach tightened. "Is Noah okay?" "He's fine," she said quickly. "But we received an anonymous report expressing concern about his emotional well-being." For a second, I didn't understand. "A what?" "A report, ma'am. Someone claimed he's been withdrawn, maybe neglected. We're required to follow up." I set down the spatula, heart pounding. "Withdrawn?" I glanced at Noah, sitting at the table, happily drowning his pancakes in syrup. "Yes, ma'am. The counselor spoke with him today. He seems perfectly fine. Respectful, polite, no red flags. But we're required to document it." There it was. The click of recognition, cold and sharp. Anonymous. Family is everything. I took a breath. "Thank you for letting me know." When I hung up, my hands were trembling not from fear, but from fury. That night, I sat by the window after Noah went to bed, watching the reflection of my phone screen glow in the glass. The call replayed in my mind like static. Withdrawn. Neglected. Those words would now live somewhere in a file about my son because someone wanted to punish me for setting a boundary. The next morning, there was another knock. 2 women in plain clothes stood at my door, badges flashing. "Mrs. Hayes? Child Protective Services." The world seemed to narrow around their voices. I stepped aside. "Come in." They were polite, professional. They checked the kitchen, the fridge, Noah's room lined with books, Lego sets, and clean laundry. They asked questions, took notes. "Who filed the report?" I asked. "One was anonymous," one of them said carefully. "It happens." When they left, one of them hesitated on the porch. "Mrs. Hayes," she said quietly, "we see these kinds of cases all the time. You seem like a good mom." I thanked her. I shut the door. Then I slid down against it until I was sitting on the floor. The humiliation burned, but beneath it was something colder. Strategy. They wanted to scare me, to make me doubt myself, to drag me back into the same guilt trap I'd escaped from. But this time, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was documenting. That evening, I called Uncle Mark. "They filed a report," I said flatly. There was a pause. "CPS?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. That was the warning shot. "I know. You need to move carefully now. Start building your record. Screenshots, statements, everything." "I already have a folder," I said, staring at my laptop. "It's called Receipts, Amber." He gave a low whistle. "Good. Keep going." After the call, I opened my files, text messages, Venmo screenshots, photos from the restaurant, the restored wedding picture, still sitting on my counter. I renamed the folder, Family War. Evidence. For a long time, I just stared at the name. Somewhere between the breadbasket and the CPS visit, I'd stopped being the peacekeeper. Now I was the one keeping score. Outside, the night was quiet. Noah was asleep, safe. I whispered to myself, they wanted a war. Then I clicked save. When people say, paperwork can't protect you, they've never met my family. In my case, paper was power receipts, screenshots, timestamps, contracts. They'd used whispers and guilt for years. I'd learned to use ink. That night, I emailed my landlord. "Hi, Can you please send me records of all rent payments made toward Amber Lane's apartment since January? I helped cover her portion. Need it for accounting. He responded within an hour. 7 months. $5,700 total. Every transaction traced back to me. I printed them all dates, Venmo notes, even the time I wrote, "For your half of the rent, don't forget to pay me back." She never had. Then I dug deeper. The messages where she begged for help because Caleb had lost his job. But then there was a photo I'd forgotten, Amber poolside, wine glass in hand, wearing designer sunglasses. The timestamp? That exact same weekend. I stared at it, remembering how I'd wired her $200 that day. I had believed her when she said she couldn't afford groceries. A small laugh escaped me. Not bitter, just tired. When Jenna, my attorney, picked up my call, I told her everything. Harassment, false reports, defamation, CPS involvement. I said, "I'm done waiting for the next attack." Jenna's voice was calm, almost too calm. "Lauren, it's time for a cease and desist." She moved fast. Within 48 hours, 3 letters were drafted. One for Amber, one for my parents, one addressed to the Hayes family. Each outlined harassment, cyber, smears, false allegations, unpaid debts. Her final line read, "Any further contact or false claim will result in legal escalation." When I saw my name signed at the bottom, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom, an official declaration that I was done being their punching bag. The letters were sent by courier. Silence followed. For 2 days. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed with a notification: Venmo. A payment from Caleb Lane. Amount: $2,850. Note: half the rent. I told her to stop. I'm out. I stared at the screen for a long time. Caleb, the spineless husband, had finally done something right, jumped ship. Later that week, Aunt Diane called. "I ran into your mom at the grocery store," she said. She looked exhausted, said, "You're destroying the family." I laughed softly. Of course she did. I told her the truth, Diane continued. "You didn't destroy anything. You just stopped playing their game." That night, more messages came in from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Stories spilled out like confessionals. Amber borrowed $600 and never paid it back. She tripped me into babysitting her kids for a weekend, then ghosted me. She told me you were the rich one. I guess she forgot who bailed her out. Piece by piece, the narrative flipped. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the first one brave or foolish enough to say, enough. Then came the final hit. A thick envelope arrived in my mailbox, stamped with a law firm's logo. For a moment, I thought it was another bill, but the words froze me in place. Notice of intent to file petition for grandparent visitation rights. I sat down slowly. My parents weren't just angry, they were going legal. They were going after my son. Inside was a letter from their attorney, written in formal indifference. "Mrs. Hayes has denied her parents access to their grandson without justification, causing emotional distress. Petitioners believe visitation is in the child's best interest." I reread it 3 times. They didn't mention the dinner. They didn't mention the breadbasket. They didn't mention the fact that they hadn't looked at Noah once that night. No, this wasn't about love. It was about control. I felt the familiar heat of panic rise, then cool into something harder. If they wanted to turn family into litigation, fine. They'd taught me how to play by their rules. And this time, I had the paperwork. The next morning, I met Jenna in her downtown office, calm, white walls, everything smelling faintly of coffee and authority. She slid the petition across the desk without flinching. "They don't have a case," she said flatly. "Arizona law is clear: grandparents can't claim visitation unless the child's parents are divorced, deceased, or proven unfit. You're none of the above." I exhaled, finally. "So it's just noise?" "Not just noise," she replied. "It's strategy. They're trying to wear you down. They're hoping you'll give up before the court does." That made sense. That was always their way, not open war, just exhaustion disguised as love. "So what do we do?" I asked. "We respond," she said. Firmly, officially, and once. That afternoon, we drafted a reply, not just a denial, but a counterattack. We attached everything: Screenshots of Amber's posts, text messages from my parents, proof of the CPS visit being closed with no findings, the rent receipts, the Venmo transactions, even the cease and desist letters. Each page was evidence, each paragraph, a nail in the coffin of their narrative. When Jenna finished compiling it, she handed me a final copy. "Sign here," she said. My hand didn't shake as I wrote my name. Later that night, I sat at my kitchen table after Noah went to bed, staring at the folder labeled Hayes v. Hayes. It felt absurd. My family's name against itself, the perfect symbol for what we'd become. The next day, I went to Noah's school and spoke with the principal. I handed her a new document, a restricted access list. "My parents and my sister are no longer allowed to pick up my son, visit, or volunteer here," I told her. She looked at the paperwork, then at me. "Is everything okay?" "It will be," I said. Then I changed the locks at home. Not because I thought they'd come, but because, after everything, I wanted the sound of the deadbolt to mean something. That evening, I took one more step. Jenna had suggested updating my living will. If anything ever happened to me, custody of Noah would go to Aunt Diane and Uncle Mark. Not my parents, not Amber. The people who had stood silently beside me when everyone else shouted me down. When I finished signing, I sat in the quiet house and looked around. The stillness didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. Then I opened a fresh document on my laptop, titled it, Final Letter. "This is the last time you'll hear from me," I began typing. "You've turned parenthood into punishment and family into fear. I'm done. If you try to contact me again, I'll treat it as harassment. We are finished permanently." I saved it, printed 2 copies, sealed them in envelopes, and placed them on the counter. Tomorrow, I'd mail them. Tonight, I would sleep. For the first time in years, without waiting for the phone to ring, I mailed the letters the next morning, one to my parents, one to Amber. No signature, no return address. Just my handwriting on a white envelope and the weight of everything I'd carried for decades. By the time the mail truck disappeared down the street, I felt strangely light. Not happy, not relieved, just finished. I came back inside, made coffee, and stared at the stack of legal folders on the table. "Family business," I whispered to myself, almost laughing at how literal that phrase had become. The phone stayed silent all day. No calls, no messages, no threats disguised as apologies. I didn't need to check social media to know what would come next. Another cryptic post, another attempt to make me the villain. But this time, I didn't care. Their world ran on validation. Mine was built on proof. That evening, while Noah did his homework, I opened my journal and copied the contents of my final letter word for word. "This is the last time you'll hear from me. I gave you decades of chances, and you repaid me with betrayal, lies, and now legal threats against my child. You are no longer my family. If you try to contact me or Noah again, I will pursue a restraining order. If you show up at my door, I will call the police. If you attempt to involve yourselves in my life again, I will make every detail public. We are done for good." I read it aloud once. The words didn't tremble. Then I tore the copy from my journal, folded it neatly, and slid it into the bottom drawer with the rest of my documentation, the paper trail of everything I'd survived. Before going to bed, I stood in Noah's doorway for a moment. He was asleep, his face calm, the kind of peace I'd forgotten was possible. I whispered, "It's over," though a part of me still didn't believe it. But when I turned off the light, there was no dread, no buzzing phone, no guilt waiting in the dark, just silence and the soft rhythm of my son's breathing. A week later, I took Noah camping. No phones, no noise, no reminders of who we'd cut out of our lives. Just us, a tent, and the steady heartbeat of the woods. The sky was deep blue by the time we built our small fire. Noah roasted a marshmallow, his cheeks glowing in the flicker of flame. For the first time in months, his laughter sounded unguarded, light, honest, whole. He looked at me, smiling. "You seem happier, Mom." I smiled back, the kind that feels strange on your face after too many storms. "I am, sweetheart." I finally drew the line. When he turned back to the fire, I reached for the old gift bag I'd brought with me, the same one that once held my parents' restored wedding photo. The frame still gleamed, silver and perfect, pretending to preserve something sacred. I stared at it for a long time. The faces inside looked like strangers wearing familiar skin. Then, slowly, I unwrapped it and laid it at the edge of the fire pit. The flames caught quickly, curling the corners, melting the illusion. Noah glanced up. Was that important? I nodded once. It used to be. We watched until the frame was nothing but ash and glimmer. The woods went quiet except for the crackle of the fire and the soft rustle of trees. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. I lay back on the cool ground, watching stars emerge one by one. My past had been loud, full of slammed doors, whispered insults, and unspoken debts. But the present? It hummed with stillness. I turned to Noah. You know what, kiddo? He looked up, marshmallow stick in hand. What? Family isn't who raises you, I said. It's who lets you grow. He grinned, eyes reflecting the firelight. And under that wide, forgiving sky, I finally believed it.